Hello. Question was raised during class last time about the difference between precompositing and parenting layers and why you should use one versus the other. I'm going to try to clarify the concepts through this short video. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same example we used in class, which is the rocket and the flames. I am going to select both of those items in the project window, and I'm going to drop them into this composition that I had pre-created. The composition main is 1280 by 720. So now with those items still selected, because I just dropped them into that composition, I'm going to press the S key on the keyboard to call the scaling value for both of them. Notice that if I have several items selected, if I press one of the shortcuts for transformations, it will activate that transformation for all items that have been selected. Then, by the same token, if I change the value of 1, in this case I'm going to change the rocket size to 60%, the scaling value, notice that the flames also scale down to 60%. This is a time-saving technique. Now I'm going to deselect by clicking on the gray area down here on the timeline, and I'm going to click on the flames only and bring it down slowly so that the flames look like they're coming from below the rocket. As you notice, the flames seem to be coming out of the rocket. Now notice also that my flames are 10 seconds in length. The original file is 1 second in length. 1 second in length, I'm sorry. But I had previously right-clicked on that flames movie and gone to Interpret Footage, Main, and changed the loop values to 10 so that I have 10 seconds of looping footage. Now with that done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both layers and I am going to pre-compose the layers. To do so, I either select the layers I want to pre-compose and go Layer, and then at the bottom of that drop down, which you cannot see on this video, is the option for pre-composing. The shortcut on a PC is Control-Shift-C, on the Mac is Option-Shift-C. You can also right-click any of the layers that are within those items that you want to pre-compose, and on the drop-down menu you will find Precompose, which is also at the bottom, towards the bottom of the flyout menu, but you cannot see it on this video either. So I'll just simply click on this option and I'll go ahead and answer the questions that are being asked on this dialog box. Now you notice that only the move all attributes into new composition is the option that's selected for you. You cannot leave any attributes into main because there's more than one layer. And because of that, you might have conflicting values on transformations. Therefore, your only option is to get all of those keyframes and move them into the new layer if you had created keyframes. In our case, we hadn't created anything. We only scaled down the pieces, so we don't have to worry about any of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this precomposition Rocket Fire, and I'm going to click OK. Notice that the two layers disappear and a new precomposition is placed in its place. This layer, which is a precomposition, as you notice, take a look at the icon, is the precomposition that contains those two layers. What this gives me is the ability to control those two layers as if they were one. Now I can always double click on that precomposition to open up the two layers. Notice that now my composition window says Rocket Fire, and notice that I have both the main and the Rocket Fire composition open. So I can always go back by double clicking on the precomposition layer, and it allows me to go into that precomposition and make any changes as required. So if I say, for example, wanted the flames over here, I go back to main and my flames have been moved to that area. That's obviously not the case, so I'll undo that. And I'm going to close the composition by clicking on the X on the tab. Going back to the main composition, I have my Rocket Fire precomposition layer set up and ready to go. All I need to do is place it the way I wanted to place it. So if I wanted to, say for example, scale this item, I could just go scaling value and both items will scale evenly. In our case, what we did was rotate it. So I'll press the R key to rotate it and we enter the value of 90 degrees. Now you notice that the flames and the rocket rotate as if they were a unit. However, they're still independent layers inside the precomposition. Now, the other thing we did in class was we split this layer at key points in order to create motion. So to split a layer is a fairly simple process. You just need to find the points within your timeline that you want to utilize as the key points for cutting. In our case, we used when the rocket was outside of the screen so that there was no noticeable change or anything didn't skip or it didn't look like there was a cut that wasn't planned within our video. So say, for example, if I wanted to split this layer at the 2-second mark, all I need to do is go to the 2-second mark and select the layer, go Edit, Layer Split. Where are you? Split layer, Control-Shift-D. And there it is. So now the layers have been split. That doesn't mean that this layer cannot be expanded again. You could expand it if you needed it, but what it does for you is it actually splits the layer and creates 2 separate layers for you if you need them to be independent. Let me undo that really quick. And now with this in mind, what I'm going to do, that is the process, by the way, of creating a precomposition. And again, I hope it clarifies that you want to use a precomposition when you want the layers to behave to more than one layer, or one layer, more than one layer to have to behave as if they were a single unit. So any transformations that you apply to that precomposition layer will be applied to anything that's inside it, scaling, rotation, and any effects that you apply to it. That said, let me create a new composition. In this composition, I'm going to call Sky. And this Sky composition, I am going to open up. And into this one, I am going to drop the Milky Way. That's going to be my background image. On top of that Milky Way, I am going to drop the moon. And there's the moon. Now, let me scale down that moon slightly to about 50%, so you guys see what I mean by parenting a layer to another. I am going to parent that moon to the Milky Way, which means the Milky Way layer, it's the parent. The moon, it's the child. You do that by right-clicking in this area, right above your switches, and inside the columns drop-down, choose Parent, which you don't see on this video. There it is. It opens up. And now with that open, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to the moon, please, your parent is Milky Way. Now, if I move my Milky Way background, say, for example, position change, if I move my Milky Way, the moon follows the parent. However, if I, for example, decide to rotate the moon, the rotation values for that moon, notice that they do not affect the sky. However, because the parent governs the child, if I were to place a rotation value on the Milky Way, the moon would follow. So I can always animate, for example, the sky, and the moon will follow. The stars, the Milky Way. If I animate it, the moon will follow it. But I can always animate the moon independently, and it will do something completely different. So, for example, if I rotate the Milky Way, starting at 0, I'm going to create a keyframe, and then I'm going to go to 2 seconds, roughly. The 2-second mark, I am going to enter a value of 1 rotation for the Milky Way. Hit return, and there is my rotation. Notice that my Milky Way rotates. Then at the same time, notice that I have 1 positive clockwise rotation. I am going to the moon, and I am going to create a keyframe at the beginning of that timeline. I am going to the 2-second mark, and I am going to enter a -1 value for the rotation of the moon. Hit return, and what that would do is it would counter the rotation of the sky. My sky is rotating clockwise 1 time over 2 seconds. My moon is rotating -1 rotation, which is counterclockwise for 1 rotation in the same amount of time. Therefore, the moon should not move, and it does not. The sky moves only. And that is because I can affect any transformations on the child without having to consult the parent. However, if the parent decides to do something different, the child will follow. So if I continue, let's say, for example, I increase the values of rotation for my Milky Way to 2, my moon should rotate once, as the Milky Way rotates twice. I hope this clarifies what where you should use precomposition versus parenting. Parenting allows the child to behave independently, but then the parent ultimately governs whatever that child does. So the child will always follow the parent even though it can on itself do certain things. On precomposing, both items, both layers, or more than one layer, will act up as a single unit. One will not follow the other in the precomposition option because they're all sort of packaged into this one box, and you're controlling all of the layers through that one box. Hope this makes it clear. Please let me know if you have any questions. See you soon.